Thank you to all the speakers. There was a lot of doom and gloom about the state of the open web, which candidly I share, but maybe this is also a moment to understand that the open web is perhaps more important than ever. So how can we take advantage of this opportunity and call for greater protections and preservation of the open web?
Thank you for that question. I think it's going to start with a lot of public awareness. I taught in a Georgetown policy class last semester, and I asked them, what is the open web? Nobody knew. One student raised his hand and he said, is that like the dark web? Well, okay. So I don't know that the sort of current generation of folks that are coming up know and even understand what the open web is. They use apps. I don't think of that as the open web exactly, although some apps are better than others at being open. So I think it's going to start with a lot of education. Oh God, re-education is not a good word, but a lot of educating of both the public and policymakers about the benefits and the values of the openness that we've had for the last, really, if we go back to the ARPANET, 50 years, like all of this technology was built on open protocols and open access. And to me, it would be a real serious tragedy of this AI moment, which has so much hope to solve so many of our biggest problems. But if the consequence of that is we can no longer have libraries, then I don't want it.
I guess there's big policy decisions to be made in the short term about how to solve some near-term problems. So age assurance is a good example. There are paths where you can solve that in a way that protects the open web, and there are ways that you can solve it that massively undermine the open web and either make the sharing of personal data and sensitive personal data more ubiquitous in a really negative way and entrench kind of silos of data that are actually not interoperable. So I think the challenge for all of us is when we're trying to solve these short-term policy problems, making sure we solve them in a way that looks long-term at the impact on the open web. And I think everything from content scraping to copyright to age verification to like protecting websites from harmful bots, all of those issues have multiple policy choices you can take. Some are really bad, some will stand the test of time. And I think open source, decentralized, privacy preserving is harder to build, but better for the long term of the open net.
Just very briefly, I think that one underappreciated aspect is that we also need more vision casting into the future of what openness looks like with these new technologies. If you ask what the open web was in 1970, you'd be like, oh, people should be able to dial who they want on the telephone and all this kind of stuff. And so things are going to change and they're going to keep changing. But the values that are represented, I think, on this stage can be everlasting if we have the right technical visions and creativity to envision a future that is different than the maybe more default, lockdown, centralized path.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing from a more technical perspective. When we decided to open source some of our models, and again, like I said, before Roblox, I spent a decade in open source, we had a long debate. Should we even open source these safety models? Because you're giving away the bad actors our secret sauce, if you will. And I think in the end, we ended up with being open is actually better, because that will actually make our systems even stronger. If we know the bad actors can actually use these things to evade our systems, yes, we'll make them even stronger. And most of the security software and safety software, if you see, making them open actually makes the software even better. The systems are able to detect these things even quicker and harder to escape. So I think open web and open source is kind of a given in my mind, right? I don't think we should be walking away from it.
So I felt like there was a tension perhaps in your talk and then the talk about the open web. In your thesis, as I understand it, is that it needs to have access to ever more sections of data. And certainly much of the sense that the backstory of Stan and Lila's talk is about people wanting to resist the ingestion of their data into AI systems. And so I was hoping perhaps you two could talk about the tension of that a little bit.
I don't think we were resisting the use of our content at all, right?
The reason that servers are starting to lock down access and the problems like those alluded to and then Archive is facing are because of people wanting to avoid that as an outcome.
So we're trying to have both, right? We're trying to have the cake and eat it at the same time, where all of you, all the humans on Earth can access the website, our website, Wikipedia, as easily as they ever could. We don't want to put paywalls. We don't want to make it more friction-y than it already is. And we want heavy reusers of our content, AI companies, to be able to get access to that too, because we want people to be able to access reliable information wherever they get it, even if that's not from our website. And so my colleague Lane here is in the audience. He's part of our enterprise team. He can tell you more about what that looks like for us, but I think we are not opposed to there being more data on Earth for machines and people, but we need to do that in a way that's sustainable for us.
Yeah, I think some of the tension you're noticing is also about timelines, in the sense of fighting the openness battle today. You're on the front lines right here telling you what it's like advancing openness. The parts that I was describing assumes one kind of like tectonic change in how data is exchanged that I think is best described as the copy problem. And so the copy problem has been with us forever, which is if I give a copy of a piece of information to someone else, I can no longer control how they're going to use it. And that underpins massive incentive challenges and authenticity challenges and all sorts of other things. That copy problem is about to be solved in a way, like the ingredients for it to be solved, where I can give a piece of information to someone else, but only for a single use as opposed to a plethora of them. This forces us to ask, what is openness in this realm? What does it look like when you can trade individual uses of data as opposed to trading raw underlying copies? And I think openness then has to do more with power and these types of dynamics. So how I would see that resolving is a paradigm called attribution-based control, which is a different way that information can be traded. So do check that out, but a little too much for a 7-minute talk.
I'm going to definitely double down on the idea of the copy problem being, I think, central to all of this. And as somebody who's been a copyright lawyer for my whole career, and now all of a sudden I find myself being a bot lawyer, I can say that I think copyright law as it currently exists is really not set up very well for this moment, and like just absolutely massive troves of information. Some of us think of that as data. Some of us think of that as content that's monetizable. So I would say we really, really need to look at things like statutory damages reform. But I will also say that as somebody who has been a staunch defender of fair use, which is the flexible provision of copyright law that says under some circumstances, you can actually use other people's stuff without getting permission or even telling them what you're planning to do with it. That has driven so much of our innovation and also so much creativity. And I really worry that in this moment where everybody has to sort of tell everybody in advance, like, this is how I'm going to use this single thing, that we're really going to lose that flexibility and that ability to, especially anonymously, be able to access other people's stuff and comment on it and transform it and change it for whatever, for all kinds of different purposes. And so I think that's one of the real policy challenges we have right now as well.
Hi, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to transition to our next round of lightning talk. So can we give another hand to our amazing speakers?
Well,